It's a child.
David.
Sorry, I'm trying.
Yeah, it's so much better now. How are you doing? So you're out. Where are you in Vermont?
I am. Hold on. It doesn't get much more pastoral, right? It's Vermont.
It's beautiful.
And those are vines that desperately need to be pruned because they look like this gnarly. It's like the Medusa vine over here. And if you can see, all those little buds are popping out way too fast right now. Let me see if I can find you a little, and then inside are grapes, which is so wild, but also too soon. Turn around, guys, turn around.
Okay, so first of all, for anybody who doesn't know, David and I went to Juilliard together millions of years ago. David was an opera singer, and then he left Juilliard, and I'm going to let him tell you all what he ended up doing because he took a route and we all went, what? And it's amazing and fascinating, and I love my friends because they are extremely talented people. So, David, you're on.
All right. So after dancing with Isabel at Juilliard and singing a bit, I sang for a while and went to Rice, did my master's there, which took me to Houston to study with Dr. King, and did my master's at the Shepherd School, and then decided to take a pause from singing because it was kind of right in like 2010, right when the first sort of recession. I love talking about 2010 like it was a recession when we're in what we're in right now. I'm like, things. And I was like, you know what? It's either move to Europe and try things out there, or keep auditioning for young artist programs. But I'd kind of started down the rabbit hole of wine when I was in New York, actually, with Ken Merrill. For those who know Ken, a brilliant musician, conductor, and also it turns out he and his partner Chris are amazing wine aficionados and collectors. I guess 2011, I sang my last gig, and then I took my first course with the Court of Master Sommeliers, which is a pretty awesome organization that does certifications for sommeliers, and began that. I guess my first course was 2011, and then took over wine buying for a wine bar, started working in distribution, started wine buying for a restaurant group, kept sitting exams, and then in 2016, fast forward, passed my Master Sommelier exam, and joined
the first
those.
Time. You passed it the first time.
Second time
the
sitting.
Second time. Well, but that's still really impressive, because if you were saying, I remember when you were talking about it, because there were so many exams that you had to pass, right? Weren't there like stages, or am I wrong?
Tasting, a theory portion and a service portion, the service being kind of like performing service in the scariest restaurant ever, filled with master sommeliers. And blind tasting, you taste 6 wines in 25 minutes. It's kind of like, I think it's actually, I mean, singing opera auditions prepared me pretty well for that, just because you've got like one shot a year basically to get the wines right. And if you don't, then you just do it again the next year. And if you keep not passing, then you basically, it goes on indefinitely. So it's miserable if you don't pass. So thankfully I passed the tasting on my second time out, which was very nice to get that done. And that was the last section that I needed to pass. So it's like a 3% pass rate on the exam, and I think there are now 269 of us in the world. So we are a weird group of people. I went from opera singing, which, as you know, is
number, my friend.
Well, I went from one business, which is, as you know, wildly difficult to be successful in, or in which to be successful, and went to another one that's also challenging. Although Thankfully, you don't need to be a master sommelier to be a practicing sommelier or working in the wine business. So it just became kind of an obsessive thing, which it sort of has to be. If you want to sing on the stage at the Met, then you aren't going to get there overnight.
No worries. So I know that you were in Houston for a while because you had started, or you had co-started a restaurant.
Yeah, we started a very small company. So yeah, I was a partner in Goodnight Hospitality, which opened Goodnight Charlie's, which is a honky-tonk, a nice crossover between music and alcohol. Not so much wine, mostly whiskey. And live country music's Red Dirt Texas Country, which was super fun. And then we opened Rosie Cannonball, a restaurant that sort of Southern European style restaurant, and Montrose Cheese and Wine, which is a retail cheese and wine shop. And we were in the process of opening March, which is going to be a fine dining restaurant. And I decided, upon being up in Vermont in January teaching an intro for the Court of Master Sommeliers in Burlington, the first one that had ever actually occurred here, that I really was missing family and missing this part of the country. And the restaurant business, for those who have not spent much time in it, is super challenging and long hours. And I was thinking it might be time to do something slightly different. And so with some shifts and things that were happening in Houston, I was like, okay, and began the conversation with my partners about leaving, and sort of decided that it would be better to do that before the last restaurant opened, just to kind of let that team do their thing. And then I guess began the process of getting on the road. And 1 week into the trip, or sort of 1 week out from leaving Houston, everything went nuts. And the restaurants were forced to close and all the things. And we were in a moving truck parked in Burlington, Vermont, trying to find a rental property, which was super fun. So now, I mean, with all restaurants basically still doing curbside or closed or trying to get reopened, I sort of had wanted to go into production and had thought about making wine, making cider, things like that. And then this vineyard became available, and I signed the lease last weekend. And so, so instead of actually running around being a sommelier and doing that, I am pruning a vineyard that probably should have been pruned about 3 months ago.
But what kind of grapes are in the vineyard?
Yeah, hi Denise. So up here in Vermont, we can't really grow traditional varieties very well. Some people do. It's really hard. They just don't weather the winters well. They can deal decently well. Like right now, it's supposed to be 90 degrees today, which is miserable. I mean, it's fine if you're in Texas where 90 degrees is normal. It's Vermont in May. It's too soon for this, but
way too soon, yeah.
Yeah, but in the winters, it really drops down. Anything below, 20 degrees below zero, things like that, and grapevines just kind of die. So these are all hybrid varieties. So varieties that basically, when you think of like the grape varieties, most of what's grown for fine wine production is all Vitis vinifera. It's all one species of grapes, right? Merlot, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, they're all the same species. In an effort to sort of deal with the cool climate up here, some scientists have basically been breeding hybrid grape varieties, so crossings of varieties to use varieties that are indigenous to the United States and that can actually deal with the cold with like vinifera species. So trying to create grapes that are delicious but also really cold hardy. So this is all. This is actually the oldest vineyard in Vermont, which is amazing. I have no idea how I'm fortunate enough to be working with it. But the vines behind me right here, I will turn around, are all, and you can see those gnarly old vines. Like the wine business here is super nascent still. So Frontenac is a relatively-ish recent development, not super new. And over there, the smaller vines, I'm not moving because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my connection. But the smaller vines are Marquette. And Marquette was developed in the 21st century in Minnesota, which is a great place to develop things that are intended for the cold.
Right.
There's also We also have the Frontenac Blanc, so the white version of Frontenac, and that's it up here. Other folks are working, I mean, honestly, in Vermont, making wines from La Crescent and from, Brianna, and all of these really interesting grape varieties that they're different, but I think the wines are really special. And I think there's been a lot of press. Eric Asimov with the New York Times and like a bunch of people have been writing, Jamie Good, about the development of hybrid varieties and how they're actually making some really delicious wines. So,
and have you made wines before? Like, have you gone, vine to bottle before? Have you done it?
Absolutely not. I have no business doing it, but I'm super excited. No, I haven't. I have. It's funny, when I was coming up here, I was talking with some folks, and it's like I have as much academic knowledge of all of this stuff as one can have, just having sort of obsessively studied it forever. But I've never. I mean, I had a pruned a vine or two just with colleagues who own vineyards, but not. Nobody really. Pruning vines is not the sexy part. Like, everybody wants to work harvest. You get out in the fields, you're picking grapes, you're laughing, having fun, you're stomping on them. Pruning is like 10 hours in the sun, just fucking, excuse my language, cutting these monster vines down to something very much smaller so that they can grow properly. It's been totally wild. And, I'm, as you know, never been one of those people to be like, oh, I've never done that, I shouldn't try. So the crazy in me just was like, all right, this vineyard became available. There are great mentors up here. I work with, I actually was pruning with Deirdre Heekin, who makes the La Garagista wines. If you haven't tried those, you should definitely look for them. They're really special wines made in Vermont. And
what was the name again?
Garagista. She's on Instagram at LAGARAGISTA, which I think is sort of the Italianate version of the garagiste, which is someone who makes wine in their garage. It's the way many wineries began in France. And she actually practices all biodynamics too, which is basically like organics on steroids with a little bit of witch doctory thrown in, but it's magical. I mean, that's not the nicest way to say it. It's really like working with a vineyard as an organism, as opposed to treating it like just an agricultural setting and spraying it with a bunch of different things. So it's really amazing. So her wines are totally unique. I'm in the process of converting this vineyard from conventional agriculture. They've used some fungicides in the past. They don't use herbicides. They've never used pesticides. But fungicides are kind of important up here just because of it's just sort of humid for grape varieties. But we'll be converting to organics this year, which is super exciting.
That's very exciting. So do you think, so we watched a little while ago the movie The Biggest Little Farm. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
I feel like you would love this movie, David. But it basically talks about the farm as an organism and all of the various things that are involved in creating a sort of a self-sustaining, in a way, farm, which means, they're not going to use pesticides, right? They're not going to kill the wolves that come onto the farm, even though they have sheep and chickens. They're not going to, they're going to figure out what they need to do in order to create a sort of a healthy balance. So is that sort of like where the mindset is?
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of what Deirdre does, a lot of what, biodynamics is focusing on is really planting other species of plants all around that are actually going to be conducive to the grape's health and growth. Spraying them with nettle teas and things that are natural. It's kind of like the homeopathy for an agricultural setting, but also encouraging. I mean, the best sign of a healthy vineyard is a lot of life around it. And I mean, the bumblebees are friggin' nuts right now, but the birds are crazy. You want all of this life, just preferably not the things that eat the grapes or give them diseases. But yeah, the goal is really to cultivate an agricultural setting that is self-sustaining in many senses.
What's the biggest threat for the vineyard?
Up here, it is really fungus. There are a couple. I mean, if you don't bird net your vines when the grapes get ripe, you can lose your entire harvest. So that can be a challenge, but it's kind of just standard practice. You kind of just have to do it. A flock of birds will clear out your entire harvest, and that'll be a sad day. Japanese beetles exist. There are a few other like critters, but really the big issues are like black rot and all sorts of other technical terms for basically mold that
Yeah.
that'll spring up in the vineyard. So just trying to basically keep the vines as dry and happy and healthy with a lot of airflow, and
Right.
and using treatments on them that aren't detrimental to the environment or to the plants. So
Yeah, I love that. That's so fascinating to me because there's so much thought, you know, because of course with one solution or one idea of a solution comes like 10 possible, you know, directions where it might go, and then you have to come up with 10 other solutions, and it's probably
yeah,
never ending.
it's going to be an interesting year. I mean, taking a vineyard off of pesticides, or in this case, they've been using a very, very low dose. I should be clear that like it's not like, you know, a nasty vineyard, they're just coating it with stuff. They've been using the lowest possible amount of fungicide, but taking plants off of that is still a little bit like taking a drug addict off the drug. And so the vineyards kind of freak out a little bit. So it's going to be interesting this year to kind of take the drugs away. And
Do you find, do you know if it changes the taste as well? It must, right?
yeah, I mean, just even looking at the vines in a vineyard that's farmed organically or biodynamically, it's just such a different creature. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything else. People, you know, can you taste the difference between, you know, that organic grass-fed meat product or whatever that versus the other stuff? Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, and you're going to pay a little bit more for it because it's
Right.
more challenging. But
Right.
but
No,
yeah,
that's true. You're absolutely right. Yeah, of course you do. Of course you taste the difference. Yeah.
but it's you know, it is more challenging, and I think it just requires, well, I mean, I ain't got other stuff to do right now, but it requires a lot of time in the vineyard, just keeping an eye out and saying, oh, okay, yeah, there is a little bit of a challenge in this block, or we need to
Right.
and remedy it thoughtfully as opposed to just spraying it with chemicals a few times a year. I mean, it is the easy way to do the thing, right? It's just,
Yeah.
it's like,
That's
oh,
so cool, David.
it's fun. It's,
That's so cool. I mean, it's so interesting. That's so,
it is,
I love it. So people, everybody has questions, of course, about wines themselves, you know, which I figured, you know, who else to ask but you. So this guy, Emmett730, he just had, it's a very basic question, but it's a good one. He says, I love wine, but I have limited taste and I only like some kinds of reds, but how could I widen my appreciation of it?
so
Which I think is sort of like a person who says, I don't know much about classical music. I've only heard one symphony.
absolutely.
I like it, but I don't know how else to get into it. It's
Absolutely.
the same, right?
No, it's a
And I
complete
think
parallel.
it's a really good question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's your answer with music?
Oh, my answer with music is I usually give them a couple to start with. I'll say, like, go listen to Marriage of Figaro. I think it's funny. I think it's easy to get into. You're probably going to have the same thing. Like, try this white wine. It's easy. It's citrusy. It's light on the palate.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can have is a guide, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
the ability to, and so I always tell people, like, we're so stuck, and COVID kind of screwed everything up right now with respect to this, but a lot of wine stores are still open. And what I would say is pick out a label of a wine that you enjoy and take a picture, whether it's in a restaurant or at home or whatever, and then go to a wine shop that you trust. Like, you're in New York, like Crush Wine Spirits is amazing. Astor Place is fantastic. Like, there's a bunch of great shops. Verve, the guys there. I mean, like, just so many. And so walk in, talk to somebody, be like, is there a sommelier? Is there somebody who can help me? Great. This is something I like. I'd like to explore some new wines. What do you think? And then and tell them what you want to spend on it too. I think people are always so scared to be like, I want to spend $15 on a bottle of wine or $10 on a bottle of wine. Just because I'm trying new shit, I don't want to, you know, drop $200 on a bottle that I may or may not like, right? So, oh man, EJ Miller, I just saw Kova hand selected. Hey, chef. He and I worked. That was where we worked back in the day in Houston. That's funny. And then go back if you like the wine that said person selected for you. Go back and say, you picked this out for me. Show them the picture in case they forgot, because people see a lot of folks walking into a store.
Right.
And I liked this. What else you got? Let's do something different, but that you think I might enjoy. And
Yeah.
trust people if they start steering you correctly. If they are not actually steering you correctly, if like the next time it's not great and you don't enjoy it, then don't do it again. Go somewhere else. But develop a relationship with somebody who can help you. I think that's the key, right?
So I think that's super helpful to have somebody that's gonna kind of teach you a little bit along the way.
And not being scared, because I mean, classical music and wine are like two of the things that people are most terrified of. In which they feel like they are going to be most ignorant, right? It's like, oh, I don't know anything about classical music, and
you love the other even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's fact, right? I always sounded so much better when I was singing after everybody had had a lot of wine. It helps, but yeah, not being afraid to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what about summertime wines? Do you have any like favorites that you go back to every summer, since we're heading into summer and we're all going to be doing our rosé indoors?
Yeah, I mean, lots of rosé and lots of bubbles. I think always. People don't drink enough bubbles. I'll put the plug out there for just bubbly wine. Like,
I like bubbles. Bubbles.
Right?
Bubbles.
All the time. Like, it's not a celebratory thing, or I mean, it can be. Sure, it's great for a celebration, but also like just bubbles they pair well. Like champagne pairs with everything. Bubbles in the afternoon, bubbles in the morning. Fuck, like a good mimosa is a glorious thing, right? So,
what do you have a best Argentinian wine? Do you have an opinion about that?
Argentina's a little bit challenging for so many reasons, Isabel. Yeah. For so many reasons. Argentina is challenging because they kind of put all their stock in Malbec early, right? And so there's a lot of Malbec, and some of it's very good, some of it's really not. It's kind of like what happened after Sideways came out, that movie, and everybody wanted to drink Pinot Noir, and then Pinot Noir became like one of the least high value wines out there. That's not really a very intelligent way to say that. It was like every Pinot Noir in the market was selling because people thought they should be buying Pinot Noir, and as a result, Pinot Noir became pretty much garbage. In many cases, it's still one of the most glorious grapes ever, but like Malbec is in the same place where it's like there's just so much friggin' Malbec in the market that it's kind of become I don't know. It's hard to find good ones, but some of the folks in southern Argentina are doing really good work. Like Bodegas Chacra is growing Pinot Noir actually in Argentina, and it's really lovely. But I also think they've got some really interesting big like Cabernet Malbec blends, and I think Cabernet is a much more interesting grape for me. Anyway, so.
Always like, what 3 bottles do you always have? Like in your house? Do you always have like something around?
It's really difficult because the world of beverage is so world of characters is broad too. I'm not going to overthink it. I'd need a bottle of champagne, a bottle of whiskey, probably a good bottle of rye, and a bottle of Campari.
Oh, okay.
I think you got kind of a little bit of everything, and if I had to go with 3 without overthinking it, I'm sure I'm going to go back and be like, oh, actually that.
I'm going to get a text from you later today. I'm going to get like a slew of
wait, what about that? No.
You'd be like, actually, I amend my first, second, third, and 12th answer.
Yeah, they're all, This is live, though. It disappears forever? Or
no, it won't, because I'll put it on YouTube.
Oh, shit. All right, well, man, it's going to be a lot of beeping. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I always mark the whole, is this made for children? I'm like, no.
No, definitely not. You clearly haven't met David.
Oh, you're not the worst by far. Don't even worry.
That I believe. You've been interviewing singers. Singers have potty mouths.
Singers are a bunch of sailors. Come on.
It's a fact. But so are sommeliers. So, again, all the connections.
And then, you get the singer sommelier that you are. And so it's like the perfect worlds right there.
Yeah. Looking at the thread there. EJ is right. Everybody should drink more dry Lambrusco. Or sweet Lambrusco, but really dry Lambrusco. And Denise, yeah, absolutely. I'll keep teaching classes. I'm going to teach some up here, but also I'll still travel and teach for the court when we can do that again. Cool. But you and I should do this as well with much less technical wine speak, because that's really dry.
I would love it. Well, and also I'd be like, David, I taste a lemon.
Yes, perfect.
Is it a lemon, David? David?
Well, and then you can sing your song. I mean, it's the same as listening to music, though, right? It's people are like, well, I liked this this singer or this piece of music, and I didn't like that. And more often than not, like I kind of agree with people who have no experience with the thing, right? It's like, and wine is totally the same. Like most people who drink a little bit of wine can tell you when a wine is good and when a wine is not delicious.
Yeah.
Then there's personal taste, but like at a certain point, it's like, yeah, you just are refining your vocabulary after that.
Makes sense. I'm on board. All right, last question. Do you sing to your grapes?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, definitely. Especially right now. I'm like trying to sing really aggressively at them to tell them not to. I really don't need them to come out right now. They're really not supposed to be blooming like this. It's so for those who've never pruned grapes, like, which was me for a long time. This is not when you want to prune. You want to prune about 3 months ago when the buds are like really, really small. Each one of those buds is a cluster of grapes. It's like half a bottle of wine. And so when you're going through right now in pruning, every now and then, like one little bud pops off and it's like, and your heart dies a little bit because that's like, oh no, because you're just trying to save as many little buds on these things as possible.
Aww.
Like, guys, just hang on. So yes, I sing to them a lot. I'm just trying to get them to chill out.
I love that. Well, keep on singing to them. I'm so glad you wanted to chat with me today. I'm glad to see your face and hear your voice.
Likewise.
And just learn a little bit about this crazy new adventure you're on. I am so excited for you.
It's wild. Let me know when you and the fam are coming up to help me prune and pick some grapes.
Yes, please, because you might have to hire me because I don't have any work.
Come on. I know, right? I mean, there is plenty to do out here. And it's really easy to social distance in a vineyard.
Yeah. Oh, we would have so much fun. Okay. Well, awesome. I mean, maybe this summer even we'll just come out and visit or something. Because
come on up.
I got to get out of the city at some point. I'm going to go bananas.
Yeah, I think you and everyone else. Oof.
Yeah, totally. Oh, my dear. Well, I'm sending you a gigantic hug. And I hope everything stays well. I hope those buds stay chilled out.
Yeah, we'll get them done. We'll get them done eventually. But stay safe, stay healthy. Give my love to your fam, huh?
I will. Thank you. Likewise. Please stay safe. Mwah.
All right. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.